Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about California's creepiest encounters. So turn down the lights, grab your headphones, and let's step into California's dark side. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now, let's start. I was 27 when I started working nights at a rest stop just off Route 59 out past Willow Junction. It sat in the middle of nowhere between Durston and Lake Myra, and there wasn't much to it. Just 2 rows of stalls, some vending machines, a couple fuel pumps, and a squat concrete building that never stopped smelling like bleach and burnt coffee. Most nights, it was peaceful. Boring, sure, but peaceful. I'd clean up, keep the logs updated, check cameras, toss trash, and maybe see 2 or 3 cars all shift. A couple truckers, some half-asleep families pulling off to let the kids use the bathroom. It was simple work, mindless. And honestly, after some stuff I dealt with in my last job, I liked the quiet. But people kept saying weird things about October. Angela, my supervisor, had warned me the first week. October gets weird, she said, like it was just another seasonal change, right after she handed me a folder on emergency protocols. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. Honestly, I thought she meant weather. We'd had some freak hailstorms the year before, and wind gusts that knocked down signs. So I figured, sure, October gets weird. Didn't think it meant anything else. The first week went by without a hiccup. I kept my hoodie zipped up, brought extra socks because the concrete floor got cold, and made sure the rats didn't chew through the snack delivery again. A couple odd moments, sure. One guy drove off with the pump still attached. A woman came in crying and wouldn't talk to me, then left without using the restroom. But nothing beyond the usual rest stop nonsense. Then came October 12th. Or more accurately, October 13th, just past midnight. It had been quiet. I was heating up instant ramen in the microwave by the staff sink, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed headlights sweep across the far wall. A van had pulled in. Gray or off-white, hard to tell under the flickering overheads. It didn't stop by the pumps. Didn't park near the vending machines or the bathrooms either. Instead, it rolled slowly down the far lane, past everything, and eased itself into the shadows behind the dumpsters. Engine idled a second, then went silent. Lights off, just still. From the little office window, I could barely see the back corner of the van. It was parked at a weird angle. Like whoever was inside didn't want to be seen. I waited a bit. Sometimes people just needed to nap or cry or figure out if they could make it another hour down the highway. But after 10 minutes and no sign of movement, I figured I should check it out. I threw on my jacket, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled like dry weeds and something else, like sour old carpet or maybe mold. I walked toward the van, keeping my pace steady. I didn't want to surprise anyone. About 20 feet out, I paused. Still no movement, no noise, no shifting inside. I knocked on the side 3 soft taps. Nothing. No response. Not even a rustle. I raised my voice. Hey, this area is closed for overnight parking. No answer. Just the sound of my own voice bouncing back off the concrete walls. I knocked again, louder this time. Nothing. At that point, I figured either someone was sleeping hard or, well, maybe they weren't in there at all. I backed off, jotted down a license plate on my work tablet. It was odd. Didn't match any of the plate formats I was used to. Too many letters. No state marker. Could have been foreign, I guess, or fake. But I wasn't there to play detective. I went back inside, logged the plate, and sat down to wait. Nothing happened for almost an hour. Around 2, I got up to do the usual bathroom checks. Women's side was spotless. Men's side was where things went sideways. One of the stalls had something jammed in the toilet. A hoodie, dark gray, heavy with water. I pulled it out. It caught on something underneath, some plastic edge or pipe maybe, and dragged out a foam with it. It plopped into the water with a dull splash. I fished it out fast. It was still on. Water pooled under the screen, but the display worked. No messages. No notifications. Just a repeating alarm that went off every 5 minutes. 306, that's all it said. 306, over and over. I shut the alarm off, slid the phone into a plastic bag, and stuck it in the drawer under the front desk. When I stepped outside again to check on the van, it was gone. No sound, no lights, no door slamming, no tire marks. It had just disappeared. I rushed to the office, pulled up the security feed. The rear cam, the one pointed at the dumpsters, was dead. Had gone offline at 10:27, earlier than I thought. The front cam, useless. Showed nothing but empty pavement the whole time. It hadn't even picked up the van arriving. But I saw it. I logged the plate. I knocked on the side. I was starting to feel something under my skin like static, or the beginning of a migraine. At 3:06, the phone alarm went off again. I pulled it out of the drawer, hit the screen. Something had changed. The background, the lock screen wallpaper, it was a photo now. The men's bathroom. I recognized the cracked tile, the mirrors, the lighting. Only there was someone in the photo, standing just off-center, facing the mirror, arms by his side, body stiff and straight. His face wasn't visible, angle didn't catch it, but he was there, in the reflection, and I was certain he hadn't been there earlier when I checked the room. My hands felt cold, like all the heat had drained out of them. I grabbed the flashlight and ran, straight back to the men's room. Empty. No echo of footsteps, no shift of air. I checked every stall, opened the cleaning closet, tried the hatch to the roof behind the women's wing, still chained shut. I went back to the office and wrapped the phone in foil, layers and layers. It was probably dumb, but the alarm finally stopped after that, and I didn't want to see the screen again. At 4, a car came flying into the lot. Silver sedan, older model. It skidded a little before stopping near the front entrance. The door flew open, and a man stumbled out. He looked wrecked, soaked in sweat. One leg of his pants dark with blood. He limped toward me, grabbed the door frame, and stared past me toward the road. "Did they come through here?" he asked. His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in hours. "Did you see them? The van?" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He stared at me like he wanted to make sure I understood something I didn't. Then he turned, got back in the car, and drove off without turning his headlights on. No plates, no brake lights, just gone. I didn't move until the day shift showed up. Maya walked in like it was any other morning. I told her what happened. She didn't look surprised, just said, "October always does that out here." Then she opened the bottom drawer of the desk and pulled out a binder, old incident logs, handwritten yellowing pages. I flipped through them, entries from different years, always the same time of month, always the same odd details. Phones found in bathroom stalls, photos that shouldn't exist, vans with fake plates or none at all. One log even mentioned the man asking about them, bleeding from the leg. The words weren't always the same, but the rhythm was. It was like the same event kept happening in slightly different ways. Different people, same pattern. I didn't finish the shift. I drove home on back roads. Didn't even stop for gas. When I got back, I stared at the phone for a while, still wrapped in foil. Eventually, I unwrapped it, held it, and called the one number saved to its contacts. It rang once. Then voicemail. No name, just breathing. Slow, measured. Then a whisper. "Don't block the signal. They trace by memory." That was enough. I grabbed my keys, drove to the bridge near my apartment, and threw the phone into the creek. Watched it sink beneath the water and vanish. I never went back to that job. Didn't answer calls from Angela. Didn't pick up my last paycheck. I just left it behind. It was the first week of October, and I couldn't shake this weird, restless energy I'd been carrying around all day. Work hadn't given me much to think about, and the apartment felt too quiet, like the walls were listening. So I threw on my jacket, told my wife I'd be out for a bit, and walked out into the night. The street smelled like wood smoke and wet grass. It had rained that morning, just enough to make the air thick and cold. I wasn't trying to get anywhere in particular, just needed to move. I turned onto a couple of streets I didn't recognize, places tucked back behind the hardware store and the old diner. They weren't on my usual walking route, and most of the homes looked like they'd been standing long before I was born. Some had peeling paint or warped fences leaning into the sidewalk. One had Halloween decorations already out, ghosts made of old sheets tied to sticks, jack-o'-lanterns that looked more mold than pumpkin. I kept walking. Then I saw it. Then I saw it. At the end of a short lane, wedged between two older houses, was a small lot that didn't look like it belonged to anything. It was fenced on three sides, just a patch of grass and dirt with a crooked sign stuck into the ground. Big piece of plywood, painted in fading red. Oktoberfest, haunted house tonight. The letters were uneven, like someone had painted them by hand a long time ago and never touched them up. Some of the paint had peeled, curling at the edges. The sign leaned slightly to the left, held up by cinder blocks. Behind it was a house, or something like a house. It didn't look lived in. Windows glowing with soft yellow light, just bright enough to make out the shape of curtains inside. In one of the windows, something moved, quick. Just a flicker of motion, enough to make me stop and stare. There were no cars parked nearby, no signs of life at all. No music, no laughter, none of the usual haunted house stuff, just quiet. The only sound was the faint buzzing of a power line overhead, humming steadily like white noise. I told myself I'd just check it out. Just a quick look. Maybe it was one of those local things, small town events that don't bother with online promotion or posters. I stepped closer. The lot was uneven, with patches of grass and muddy spots that sucked at my shoes. To my left, a row of hedges blocked a view from the street. I followed a narrow path cut between them and came up on what looked like a ticket booth. Old wood, weathered by years of sun and rain. There was a single bulb above it, flickering like it was trying to stay awake. No one inside. Just an old stool and a cash box that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. I waited there for a second, just stood, not sure why. I should have turned around, but I didn't. Something about the stillness, it didn't feel threatening exactly, just off, like the kind of silence that makes you think you're not really alone. I heard a sound from beyond the booth, low and muffled. Could have been a creak or a shuffle, something small, maybe someone adjusting their footing on wood. I swallowed, glanced behind me, then turned back and walked past the booth. The door ahead was slightly open. I pushed it gently and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Wet straw, old wood, and something chemical, maybe varnish or glue. The hallway in front of me was narrow, barely wide enough for two people to pass shoulder to shoulder. The walls were lined with sconces that gave off a weak yellow light, the kind you'd find in an old motel. The glow wasn't warm. It barely pushed the darkness away. Between each light fixture, there were doorways. Some closed, some slightly ajar. Shadows flickered behind the sconces. Not like people moving, more like the shadows themselves had weight. I moved forward slowly. The floor creaked beneath my feet. There were candles in shallow alcoves along the wall. Cheap electric ones with plastic flames. Some flickered, others stayed still. Halfway down the hall, I saw someone. A figure, standing completely still at the far end. Tall, not moving. Not facing me directly, just present. I stopped. "Hello," I said, my voice barely audible. The figure turned its head. Not its body, just the head. It was a slow, smooth motion, like a hinge moving without friction. Its eyes caught the light. They looked too wide, too round, not glowing, just empty. Like something staring out from behind them wasn't used to being seen. My stomach turned. I stepped back, and as I did, a door to my left creaked open. No sound before that, no footsteps, just the door moving. I ducked inside. The room was narrow, lined floor to ceiling with mirrors. Not the funhouse kind. These were tall, antique-looking, with tarnished edges and streaks running down the glass. My reflection stared back at me, then another, then another. The lights inside flickered slightly, and my face multiplied in every direction. Except one. One of my reflections didn't move when I did. I stared at it, tilted my head, raised a hand. It didn't copy me. It just stood there, a half step out of sync. I spun around. Nothing behind me. No one in the room. When I turned back, the reflection was gone. I didn't stay to figure it out. I bolted through the next door and into another hallway. This one was longer, colder, lined with jack-o'-lanterns on pedestals, each lit from within. Some had goofy faces. Some were carved with deep frowns or wide, manic grins. One had a face that looked genuinely scared, and as I stared at it, its expression shifted. The mouth dropped open wider. The eyes stretched upward. It went from a grin to a scream. Not animated, not projected. It just changed. I backed away. Then I heard a voice. Not loud whispered, but somehow close. "Stay with us." I turned around. The door I came through slammed shut, hard. The echo ran down the hallway like a drumbeat. I ran to it and grabbed the handle. Locked. I twisted and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. Then the lights started going out. First, the jack-o'-lanterns. One by one. The flames inside flickered and died until only the ones closest to me remained. Then those two. Until I was in the dark, complete dark. I held my breath. Somewhere behind me, I heard footsteps, soft ones, like someone dragging their feet slowly, getting closer. Then I felt it, something brushing the back of my coat, too gentle to be a hand, more like fabric or breath. Then a voice, closer than before, low, toneless. "Why leave?" My heart stuttered. I didn't turn. My hands skimmed the wall, desperate for something. A switch, a seam, anything, anything. Then my fingers caught on a groove, a panel that didn't quite match the others. I pressed. It shifted. I shoved it open and fell forward in the cold air. Grass beneath me, damp and soft. I looked up. I was in a garden. Overgrown vines tangled with thorny stems and broken trellises. The sky above was pale, the moon buried behind thin clouds. Behind me, the house stood silent. No lights, no figures in the windows. Just the outline of that roof against the sky. It looked still, like it had always been empty. I didn't waste time. Ran through the garden, dodging branches and tripping over roots. Something snagged my sleeve, ripped it. Another branch scratched across my cheek. Didn't stop. I reached a fence at the far edge, short enough to jump. I climbed over and landed hard on the sidewalk. Streetlights buzzed faintly. No cars, no people. Just the sound of my feet hitting the pavement as I ran. Didn't stop until my house came into view. My porch light was still on. I practically crashed into the door. Dropped my keys, picked them up with trembling fingers, and shoved the door open. Locked it behind me and leaned back, breath catching in my throat. My wife looked up from the couch, startled. She asked what happened. I tried to answer, but the words felt stuck. She walked over, checked my face, asked if I was okay. I finally managed to tell her what I saw. She didn't laugh, didn't tell me I imagined it. She opened the neighborhood app on her phone. There were posts. A few people had mentioned weird stuff. Someone seeing a red truck parked near alleys, lights showing up in old buildings that didn't have power, people going missing for a few hours and coming back without knowing where they'd been. But no one mentioned a haunted house. No one said anything about a lot between two homes on Kepler Street. My shift at the ranger station started at 7 that morning. It was October, which usually meant fog that hung low over the hills like it had nowhere else to be, and those long, quiet hikes along the high trails of Lost Butte Preserve. The preserve's tucked between the Northern California coastline and a few blink-and-you-miss-it towns, places like Dunmore, Halver Creek, maybe Olston if you're counting gas stations. The land itself? Old-growth forest, towering pines, dense underbrush, and more miles of trail than most visitors realize. It's federally protected, which means the job mostly involves making sure nobody's out there doing anything stupid, cutting trees, starting fires, leaving trash. Most days, it's peaceful. I check the perimeter, log animal activity, clear fallen limbs, and sometimes get to help with trail maintenance. Nothing glamorous, but it pays steady and gives me space to breathe. The day this all started, I was about an hour into my loop when I spotted the deer. It was lying just off the edge of Trail 12, maybe 20 or 30 feet out, half covered in the morning fog. From a distance, I assumed it had been hit or maybe taken down by a predator, but when I got closer, I stopped. The thing didn't have a single visible wound, no blood, no ripped fur, no smell of decay. It didn't even look dead, honestly, just still. Like it had knelt down, folded its legs, and then never got back up. Its eyes were closed, its coat clean, even its position seemed natural. But something about it made my skin crawl. I stood there longer than I should have. Eventually, I took out my phone, snapped a few photos, dropped a location pin, and radioed it in. Standard stuff. After that, I moved on and finished the rest of my loop. But when I came back past that same spot, maybe 25 minutes later, the deer was gone, completely gone. No drag marks, no blood, no torn up grass or signs of struggle, just the flattened spot where it had been lying. I spent a good 20 minutes walking the tree line, checking for fur or tracks. I even scanned up into the branches like some scavenger might have hauled it up somehow, which doesn't make any sense. But at that point, I was just trying to rule things out. The woods were dead silent, and the air felt weird, like my ears needed to pop. I didn't feel scared exactly, just like something was off balance. Back at the station, I printed out the photos and filed the incident report like always. Nothing in the system suggested we'd had weird animal deaths recently. That night, I crashed early but woke up around 3 from a dream I couldn't shake. In it, I was standing in the exact same clearing, only the deer wasn't dead. It was upright, blinking at me, its head tilted in this slow, unnatural way. Its mouth was open just slightly, like it was about to speak. I remember that clearly. Not groaning, not making a noise, just trying. I chalked it up to stress or maybe something I ate. The next morning, I went out again. When I got to Trail 12, I noticed something immediately. The path was blocked off, not by us. Somebody had put up 6 feet of that orange construction fencing, like the kind you see around utility work. It was staked in with wooden posts, spaced perfectly. Clean, centered right on the trail, with a rusted old gate padlocked in the middle. No signs, no warnings, no tape or paper tags, just a gate in the middle of the woods that wasn't there the day before. I radioed dispatch again, asked if we'd had contractors out, if maybe someone from forestry was doing a soil survey, erosion control, anything. Nothing. No record. No notice filed. No new projects. I was staring at this thing with a weird mix of curiosity and unease, like I was being dared to open it. So I went back to the shed, grabbed the bolt cutters, and came right back. I figured, at worst, I'd get scolded for overstepping. I sniffed the chain and the gate creaked open on its own. No wind, no one on the other side. It just eased forward like it had been waiting for me. Beyond it, Trail 12 looked exactly the same. At first, same slope, same curve. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized how quiet it was. No birds, no rustling, no wind through the branches. Just this flat, almost pressurized silence. Even my radio wouldn't work. I flipped through every frequency, including the emergency band, and all I got was a steady wall of static. Still, I kept walking. Every 20 feet or so, I tagged a tree with bright orange tape just in case I needed to backtrack fast. But about 100 yards in, I turned around and froze. Every single tag I'd placed was gone, clean bark. No torn tape, no residue, just unmarked trees. And I knew for a fact I'd placed at least 6. The trail behind me didn't even look like the one I'd walked in on. It sloped downward now, roots curled up in strange patterns, crossing the path like twisted fingers. But I wasn't lost. I knew these trails better than anyone else on staff. It was the trail that wasn't behaving. I turned and kept going. The sun didn't move overhead. It was stuck hovering behind the cloud cover, too bright and too low for that time of day. It stayed like that the entire time I was in there. I don't even know how long it was, to be honest. At one point, I passed a wooden post labeled Trail 13. It was nailed into the trunk of this tree that looked completely out of place. Smooth bark, no limbs, no leaves, no leaves. The trunk was this dull, almost sickly gray, and it had dozens of handprints pressed into the bark, not carved. Pressed. Like clay or wet plaster had captured them and then hardened. Some were child-sized. Others were far too big to belong to anything human. I didn't touch it, didn't want to, just kept moving. Eventually, I came into a clearing and saw it again. The deer, same exact position, same body. Only this time, its eyes were wide open, and something was reflected in them. A shape, tall, thin, and bending in places nothing should bend. I didn't even get a full look, because something massive cracked through the trees to my left, loud, too fast and too heavy to be a falling limb. I didn't wait. I ran hard. There was a turn in the trail, but I didn't take it. I went straight through the brush until I hit something solid and wooden. It was the back wall of the ranger station. I swear. I turned around, breath caught in my throat, expecting to see trees, maybe the clearing behind me. But there was nothing. No woods, no trail, just our parking lot. My truck was there, parked right where I'd left it. I went inside and saw something that stopped me cold. My desk was covered in printed photographs, but not mine. Same deer, same clearing, same angles. But in every photo, the background had shifted. In one, the trees had no branches. In another, the sky was just a solid, unnatural black. And in the last one, I was in the frame, standing behind the deer. Only my face was blurred, like someone had scrubbed it out with digital noise. I took the stack straight to Danny, my supervisor. She flipped through them one by one, said nothing for a while. Then she looked up and asked, dead serious, "Who gave you access to the archive?" I asked what archive. She didn't answer, just led me past the supply room and down a hallway that shouldn't have existed. At the end was a heavy door with a pin lock. Inside were corkboards, dozens of them, packed edge to edge with old yellowing photographs, every single one labeled Trail 13. Some dated back to the 50s. Each photo showed a ranger, same clearing, same deer, same angle. Sometimes they were standing, sometimes kneeling. One was lying down with their arm draped over the body like they'd passed out. The last one was dated the previous day. And there I was, bolt cutters in hand. But I hadn't told anyone about those yet. Danny looked me dead in the eye and said, "Who gave you the key?" I told her again, there wasn't a key. It was just a chain gate that hadn't been there before. She didn't say anything, just walked out of the room and left me standing there. I'd taken a night job at this small roadside inn called the Briar House. It had that old lodge look, weathered wood siding, warped floorboards that groaned even under your socks, and this constant faint smell like someone once tried to cover mildew with lavender and gave up halfway through. A sort of soft must that clung to the air, even when the windows were open. Locals didn't talk much about it, not in any real way. If you brought it up, they'd just nod slowly and say something vague like, "Oh, that place. Still open, huh?" Then they'd change the subject. First night on shift, I showed up just before 10, used the brass key to unlock the front door, no fancy systems, and flipped on the lamps in the lobby. They buzzed to life with a kind of tired flicker, like they resented being disturbed. I did a quick walk through to make sure all the hallway lights worked, checked the guest book, then settled in at the front desk with a worn paperback and an old-school radio the size of a toaster. It was quiet. Too quiet. Out the windows, you could just barely make out the highway stretching into nothing, and the breeze kicked the eaves hard enough to rattle them. Every now and then, a car would pass, headlights sweeping across the lot like brief ghosts, then gone again. Around 1:30, I heard it, heavy thumping from upstairs. Not a drop, not a creak, Actual footsteps. Slow, deliberate ones. The inn had 2 wings. This was coming from the second floor of Wing B, the one farther from the office. I checked the guest log. Only one person staying in that wing room, 214. A guy named Marcus, traveling through from Reno. Said he just needed a place to sleep before continuing on to Fresno. Told myself it was probably him. Maybe he was restless, or maybe the building was just shifting weird. Still, the sound was strange. The footsteps weren't moving like someone going from bed to bathroom. They were pacing, steady, rhythmic, like someone walking the same 10 feet over and over. I grabbed the flashlight and headed up the back staircase. The hallway up there was dead quiet. Long, narrow, carpeted in faded green. Room 214's door was shut. I gave a soft knock. Nothing. Waited a second, then tried the handle. It wasn't locked. The door creaked open on hinges that could wake the dead. Room was dark. No lamps on. The bed looked slept in, the covers a mess, one pillow half on the floor, shoes tossed near the edge, backpack on the chair. Curtains by the window kept fluttering like there was a breeze, but the windows were shut, and we were dead center of the building. No cross ventilation, no way air should be moving like that. I reached for the light switch, nothing. Tried again. Still dead. Then the hallway light blinked out behind me. Just me and the flashlight. I stepped in slow. The carpet felt weird underfoot. A little sticky, maybe damp. There was this spot on the pillow, kind of brownish red. Dried, but still fresh enough to notice. My chest tightened. I backed out fast and flicked the hallway switch again. Still nothing. I bolted downstairs. Lobby lights were mostly dead too, except one weak bulb above the desk that hummed like it had a grudge. I grabbed the emergency contact number the owner gave me. No answer. Radio? Just static. That thick, empty static that presses in your ears. Cell phone? 1 bar, maybe half. I sent a quick text. Something weird up here. Please call me. Then stared at the phone like I could will it to ring. Nothing. A few seconds later, the radio gave a click. Then a low, warped voice, barely a whisper over the static. You should leave. I don't scare easy, but I felt my whole body go cold. The voice sounded close. Not through the radio, like right behind my shoulder. I turned. Nothing. Radio went silent again. I stood there in that flickering yellow light, trying to tell myself I imagined it, tried to believe it. But something about the quiet felt heavy, thick, like it was pressing in from the walls. I went back up. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to feel like I was running from nothing. Maybe I just needed to prove the room was empty. When I got to 214, the door was closed again. I hesitated, then nudged it open. Inside, the bed was perfectly made. No stain, no fluttering curtains. The room looked untouched. Colder though, like walking into a fridge. I could see my breath. I touched the wall near the bed, and it felt damp, almost slimy. Not like water damage, like something had pressed against it. The smell hit me too. Not strong, but they're metallic and earthy, like old pennies and wet stone. I backed out fast, ran down the stairs 2 at a time and shouted for help at the front door. Nobody answered. At 3 on the dot, a car pulled into the lot. Beat-up pickup, headlights cutting sideways across the dirt. I ran to the door. Guy stepped out, mid-40s maybe. Black jacket, jeans, work boots, moved like he had nowhere to be. I felt this wave of relief. Then he stopped. Didn't come up the steps or wave or say anything. Just stood at the edge of the porch and stared upward, toward the second floor. Didn't even glance at me. Head tilted just a bit. I called out, "Hey, you need a room?" No answer. I stepped outside, keeping the door half open behind me. Cold air hit my face. The guy took 1 step back and vanished into the dark. Just gone, no sound, no footsteps, just gone. I stood there a long time, watching that same patch of road, trying to hear anything, but it was like the whole night swallowed the sound. Inside, I grabbed the radio again. Still dead. Tried calling emergency services. Line was down. The radio sputtered again around 4:40. No words this time, just a high-pitched whine like a bad tape loop, then silence. I turned and caught a glimpse of something in the lobby mirror. A shape, right behind me. Tall, narrow shoulders, gone before I could spin around. Only my reflection staring back, looking pale and jumpy. Then I heard the footsteps again. Upstairs. This time, they were coming from the hallway above the lobby. Same steady rhythm, just slow enough to feel deliberate. I took the flashlight and headed up. Every stair creaked. The hallway lights were still out. Doors shut tight on both sides, except at the in-room 217. Light under the door, faint and reddish, like candlelight. Flickering. The door itself vibrated just slightly, like someone pacing inside. I knocked. No answer. I pushed it open. Room was empty. No candles, no bulbs, no lamps. Just that weird glow, but no source. And the walls scratched up like someone had carved into them with a key or nail. You stay. Stay forever. We wait. Over and over, in a messy circle around this slick, dark stain on the floor. Looked like oil, or blood, or both. My flashlight dimmed. The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around. No one there. Door was locked. I pounded with both fists. Something moved behind me. Heavy steps. Slow. I didn't look. Just kept slamming the door with everything I had. Suddenly, it flew open so hard it almost hit me in the face. I didn't wait. I sprinted down the hall, past the stairs, down again, heart pounding. I reached the front door, and it was jammed. I smashed the emergency glass with the base of the flashlight, clawed the release, and shoved it open. Outside, I didn't stop running. The whole place was dark, windows blank. No signs of life. But in one upstairs window, I saw it again, that same silhouette. Motionless, then gone. I didn't look back again until the road swallowed the building behind me, caught a ride from a delivery driver just after sunrise. Didn't explain, didn't go back for my things. We wanted to get out of the city before October became wall-to-wall costumes and street closures. My sister had found the cabin online. She was into the whole off-grid thing. Called it a historic mining escape. It was somewhere in the Sierra Nevada foothills, outside a small town called Gray Hollow. The listing had no Wi-Fi, no TV, and just enough creepy charm to make you think twice. But we needed the break. She was bringing her new boyfriend Landon, and I decided to come along mostly to avoid a long weekend of family dinners and work texts. We packed light, filled up her Jeep, and headed out on a Friday morning. The drive started easy highways, coffee, playlists. But as we climbed into the hills, the turns got tighter, the road narrowed, and the map app just gave up. We kept going anyway. No cell service, no markers. Just a stubborn dirt road that looked like it hadn't seen a maintenance crew in a decade. The cabin sat up a hill, backed against a stretch of dry trees and yellow grass, the kind of place where nothing moved unless the wind told it to. There was a worn-out sign on a wooden post just off the trail that said, Terrace Hill Settlement, 1873-1919. No explanation. No other buildings in sight. My sister called it a good omen. Landon said it sounded like a place where people disappeared politely. The place was small. 2 bedrooms, a creaky living room with an old couch, a wood stove that puffed out more smoke than heat, and a skinny little deck that overlooked the valley below. No reception, no bars, no distractions. We unpacked and lit a few candles because the overhead bulbs flickered like they were trying to quit. The solar generator kicked in and out depending on the mood of the clouds, and every time we walked across the floor, the boards whined underfoot like they remembered better days. That first night, we made pasta and opened a bottle of wine that had a screw cap and probably cost $7. We laughed, played cards, tried not to check our phones, even though they were useless anyway. Around midnight, I walked into the kitchen to rinse my glass and saw the oven clock blinking. Not just blinking, skipping. It jumped ahead several minutes at a time, then fell back again. It flicked from 11:38 to 11:47, then dropped to 11:29. The microwave showed a different time completely. 11:23. I called them in. My sister shrugged and said it was probably a power thing. Landon unplugged both appliances and plugged them back in. Neither screen came back on, just black. We went to bed not long after. The next morning, Landon brewed coffee and said the generator had reset sometime during the night. That explained the clocks, maybe, but my watch was off too, 5 minutes behind my phone. My sister's Fitbit said 8:02, my laptop said 7:51. Everything had been synced the day before. We spent most of that day hanging around the cabin. I tried to read, but couldn't concentrate. My sister went on a short walk and came back quickly. Said she didn't want to go too far alone. Landon spent half the afternoon staring at his phone, even though there was nothing to look at. That evening, he decided to walk down to the trail near the old wooden sign, just to see what was around. He said it would be 10 minutes. We started dinner without him. 20 minutes passed, then 30. He finally came back just before sunset, walking fast, breathing heavy. His jacket was gone, and his shirt was on inside out. His hair was wet with sweat. We asked if he was okay. He said he got turned around, said the trail didn't make sense, that it looped, then didn't, that it took him in a circle, but the circle kept changing. I asked if he was joking. He just said no, and went straight to the guest room. Didn't say anything else. That night, the wind stopped. Not slowed down, stopped. The trees didn't move. No rustling, no bugs, just stillness. The kind of silence that felt too thick to breathe through. At 4 in the morning, I woke up to footsteps on the deck. 3 slow steps, then a pause, then 3 more. I didn't move, neither did my sister. She was lying across the room, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. We just listened. The steps stopped after a while. Not like someone walked away, just like they froze in place. We didn't get up until it was light. When we checked the deck, it was covered in dead oak leaves. Dry, curled, crumbling. I swept them off with an old broom from the closet. A few hours later, I walked back out. The leaves were back. Same pattern, same placement, but there were no oak trees near the cabin, only pine. We stayed in all day. No one suggested it. No one argued. We just did. Yeah, we just did. I tried to do a crossword, but couldn't finish a single clue. My sister cleaned out the same drawer 3 times. Landon sat in the armchair and held a book open without turning the page. It was like time slowed down inside the walls. That night, Landon locked himself in the bathroom. We could hear him pacing, then nothing. When he came out, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. He said he heard something whispering behind him in the mirror, said it spoke low, too low to catch the words. But when he turned around, nothing was there. He tried to laugh about it, but the sound fell flat. No one responded. We all went to bed early, if you can call it lying there in the dark bed. At 2:38, I checked my watch. Then every clock in the cabin stopped. The oven, the microwave, the wall clock. Even my battery-powered wristwatch. They all froze at the same moment. I sat up and opened my laptop. It flickered on, no login, no apps, just straight into a video already playing. No title, no timestamp, just me sitting alone on the back deck. Same hoodie I was wearing. In the video, I wasn't moving, wasn't blinking, just staring into the camera like I knew it was recording. I shut the laptop and slid it under the bed. Didn't say a word. Next morning, we packed. No one said we were leaving. We just started moving. My sister didn't brush her teeth, just shoved everything into a tote and walked out. I didn't bother folding anything, just stuffed it into my backpack and grabbed my keys. Landon looked like he hadn't spoken in years. When we stepped outside, the air was still dead quiet. We followed the gravel path to the Jeep. It had been parked nose out toward the road. Now it was turned around, facing the cabin. None of us spoke. We just got in. Landon sat in the back, silent. My sister gripped the wheel like it was going to fight her. We drove down the mountain without a word. I was working evenings at this self-storage place in Hereford, a little town barely anyone's heard of. One of those places where all the buildings look like they were built at the same time and then never touched again. My shift ran from 4 in the afternoon to just before midnight. Quiet job mostly, just me, a desk, some coffee that always tasted like old pennies, and a clipboard I pretended to care about. Fridays were slow. October 13th stood out only because I made a dumb joke about it being Friday the 13th to the woman who showed up around 6 with 3 boxes. She didn't laugh, didn't even acknowledge me actually. Just walked in wearing dark sunglasses, even though it was full dark by then, and these tight beige gloves like she was afraid to touch anything directly. She rolled the boxes in on a dolly, no help, no hesitation, like she knew exactly where to go. The boxes weren't taped shut. They were wrapped with twine. Not the kind you buy in the garden aisle either. This stuff looked old. Thick, rough, almost waxy. Wrapped multiple times around each box, knotted tight. They looked like gifts nobody wanted to open. She handed me a manifest, all handwritten. No numbers, no clear words, just tally-like slashes and diagonal lines. I looked down at the clipboard, then back at her, ready to ask a question, but she was already turning to leave. Didn't say a word. Didn't wait for a receipt or even a nod, just walked out like she'd dropped off dry cleaning. I stood there for a second, confused, holding the clipboard and staring at the boxes. They weren't heavy, not quite empty either. Each one weighed exactly the same, which was weird enough, but more than that, they felt still. Too still. Like whatever was inside was solid, settled, but also not entirely there. Hard to explain. You ever carry something and instinctively expect it to shift a little? These didn't. They sat in your hands like they'd grown roots. I stacked them into Unit G12, and when I stepped inside, something was off. The air wasn't cold, wasn't musty. It was just thin, like it didn't go all the way into your lungs. I felt a little lightheaded, but chalked it up to skipping lunch. I locked the unit and walked back to the office. Didn't think much of it at the time. Weird people drop weird stuff off all the time. It's part of the gig. Tanner, the guy who worked the night shift after me, was always late, always smelled like beer and regret, so I had extra time to kill doing the walk. It was just routine. Check every unit, make sure the locks are in place, note anything weird, then go home. When I got to G Block, I was halfway through the checklist. Turned the corner, looked down the row, and G12 was slightly open. Not wide, just cracked. The padlock was still looped through the latch, but dangling like someone had never fully shut it. My stomach dropped a little. I always double-checked the locks. Always. It was the one thing I prided myself on. I walked up slow, half expecting to find Tanner messing with me. Rolled the door all the way open. The boxes were still there, stacked the same way I'd left them, except the twine had been cut. 3 coils lay in front of them on the concrete, each cut clean through. Not frayed, not torn sliced perfectly. I didn't touch the boxes at first. I just stared at them. Then I crouched down and pressed my hand against the top one. It was warm, not like it had been sitting in the sun, warm from the inside. And I felt it, a heartbeat. Steady, strong, right under my palm. I pulled back fast and nearly lost my balance. The box rocked in place, just a little. That was enough for me. I didn't open it, didn't try to peek. I stood up, backed out, and relocked the unit without saying a word. Back in the office, I went straight to the monitors. Every aisle has a feed. I scrubbed back to when I had touched the box. Watched myself on screen kneeling, reaching out. And in that exact moment, my shadow twitched. Out of sync with me, it moved on its own. Jerked sideways like a marionette being yanked, then disappeared completely for one frame. Came back the next second, but it wasn't right. It was taller, too close. Like it had leaned forward. No one else was on the screen. No one ever entered or exited the frame. I turned off the monitor. Didn't write the report, didn't mention the unit. Just waited for Tanner to show up, reeking like a bar floor. I handed him the clipboard and walked out. Didn't say a word. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how light those boxes were, how still they felt, how something inside had pulsed like it recognized me. Next day I showed up early. Went straight to G12. The unit was empty. No boxes, no twine, just a bare concrete floor. I checked the logs, no record of pickup, no signature, nothing. I checked the footage. It ended after I left. No one came back. No one went in. I thought about telling my manager, but what would I even say? Hey, the haunted boxes disappear on their own. So I wiped the clipboard and kept my mouth shut. A week passed, then she came back. Same sunglasses, same gloves, same silence. Only now she had 5 boxes. Still sealed with that weird twine. Still labeled with slashes and meaningless marks. She handed me the clipboard and walked away again, not even glancing back. This time, I didn't move them to storage. Didn't log them, didn't even enter them into the system. I wheeled them into the back of the office and locked the door. That night, I stayed late, turned off all the lights, locked the front entrance, and bolted the rear. Just sat at the desk in the dark, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. At 10:02, I heard wheels. Not outside. Inside. The dolly was moving. I had wedged it under the filing cabinet. There was no way it should have moved. The wheels squeaked once, then again, then silence. I sat there frozen, didn't breathe, didn't look, just waited. After 5 minutes, I got up. The office door was still locked. I opened the back room. The dolly was in the corner, but the boxes had changed. They were no longer stacked. Now they were laid side by side, perfectly aligned. Each one had a red symbol carved into the top. Not painted, carved. Etched in deep and clean. And the twine? Gone. Not cut, not dropped. Just not there. Like it had never been wrapped at all. I shut the door. Deleted the logs. Shut down the camera feeds. Didn't even bother clocking out. I grabbed my keys, walked to my truck, and left. That night, I packed everything I owned and drove north until the freeway signs stopped looking familiar. I picked a small town near the coast and found a job at a gas station. Didn't tell my friends, didn't tell my sister. No social media, no trace. Thought maybe I could outrun it. A week later, just after sunrise, I heard something slide across the porch. Opened the door. There it was, 1 box. Same weight, same twine, no label. No markings. I didn't touch it. Just loaded it into the truck, drove 20 miles out to the cliffs, and dumped it into the ocean. Didn't look back. Didn't watch it fall. Since then, I've moved 4 times. Never stayed longer than a few months. Every October, it starts again. I'll hear the sound boxes being dragged, or I'll find a piece of twine curled in the mailbox like a little offering. Once, I opened the freezer and found a stack of slashed papers frozen between 2 bags of peas. No one ever sees who brings them. Nothing ever shows on the cameras. But they come, and they always find me. I've never opened one. Not fully. Not directly. But I know whatever's inside, whatever wakes up when the box is touched, it doesn't want to stay sealed. And I don't think I'm the only one getting them anymore. I think they're spreading. Reaching. Waiting for people to stop being afraid. Because when someone opens one, that heartbeat doesn't stop. I was 27 when it happened. The 3rd stop on my solo road trip was a small town near the Sierra foothills. I wasn't really into festivals, but I liked old towns, the quiet ones with cracked sidewalks and history you can feel under your shoes. Plus, the pictures looked cool. The lodge I booked was a roadside place just outside the town center. Nothing fancy. 10 rooms in a wide horseshoe layout, all single-story faded green paint peeling under the eaves. No lobby, no vending machines, not even a soda sign. Just a tiny glass front office with a bell and a clipboard for check-in. You had to ring the bell and wait. I stood there tapping the pen against the desk until a woman appeared from the back house connected to the office. She looked tired in a deep, unsettling way. Not just sleepy, but like whatever had drained her was still doing it. Her eyes didn't quite focus, like she was only half there. She handed me the room key without asking for my name. "Room 9, she said. Then she hesitated and added, "Try not to leave your window open at night." I chuckled without thinking. It came out awkward, more like a breath. but she didn't react at all. No smile, no shrug. She just stared for another second, turned, and walked back through the door behind her, shutting it quietly. No explanation. I stood there for a few seconds like maybe she'd come back and say more. She didn't. Room 9 was tucked near the end of the curve. Clean, way cleaner than I expected from the outside, but the kind of clean that feels off. No scuffs on the floor, no dust on the desk, no fingerprint smudges on the bathroom mirror. It felt like no one had touched the place in weeks. The sheets were tight, corners tucked in like hospital beds, and they smelled oddly like plastic wrap. Fresh, but artificial. I dropped my bag on the bed and went over to the window. It looked out over a dry hillside dotted with pale grass and some old trees that leaned like they'd grown tired of standing up straight. There were a few half-buried stones up there too. Could have been rubble or old grave markers, I couldn't tell. I opened the window a couple inches, just enough to let in a breeze, then headed into town. Spent a few hours wandering around, got a burger at a place called Miner's Table, watched some kids in Halloween costumes dance around a hay bale maze, and listened to a guy in a cloak try to sell me a handmade broomstick. The whole town leaned into the spooky vibe. It was kind of fun, honestly. By the time I drove back, it was fully dark. No streetlights out by the lodge. The only lights were mine, the faint glow from the office lamp, and a pale square from my own room window. I parked, walked across the gravel lot, and noticed none of the other rooms were lit. Could have been empty. Could have been early sleepers. Either way, it was quiet. Inside, I changed clothes, brushed my teeth, scrolled through my phone while half watching a rerun on mute. Typical wind-down routine. At some point, I must have passed out. I woke up to a sound. Sharp, specific. A single knock on the window. Not tapping, not scratching, just one flat knock like someone rapped their knuckles hard once and stopped. I froze. Sat up and looked around. It was pitch black outside. I could see my reflection faintly in the glass, but nothing past it. I reached for my phone. The screen wouldn't light up. Tried again. Still nothing. No power. I looked at the clock on the nightstand. Dark. Even the lamp switch didn't respond. Everything was dead. I said low under my breath, "Hello?" It slipped out. I didn't mean to. Another knock. Same sound, same spot. Just one. I got out of bed and walked to the window. I couldn't see anything outside. Too dark. Even with my face pressed to the glass and my hands blocking the reflection, it was like trying to look into a basement with the lights off. But there was something there, a shape. It didn't move. It didn't sway or breathe. It was wide at the base, flat up top, and it just sat outside the window like it had always been there. I stepped back, heart beating faster now. Then the knock came again, but not from the window, from the bathroom door. I turned sharply. The door was closed. I hadn't touched it since I came back. Hadn't even turned on the light in there. It had been open. Now it wasn't. The knock came again, soft, single, from inside. I stared at the handle, every part of me telling me not to go closer. I looked back at the front door, walked over and grabbed the knob. It turned freely. The lock was open, but the door itself didn't move. I pulled harder, used my weight. It felt like someone was holding it from the outside. I stepped back, trying not to panic, and that's when I heard it again. Another knock. From the window. I spun back, and the shape was gone. I ran to the glass, tried to see where it went, but the hillside outside was blank. Nothing moving, nothing there. Then I heard it again. From the closet. I didn't even know there was a closet until that sound came. Same knock. One, measured. I turned slowly. The door looked too tall and weirdly narrow, like it didn't match the room. I opened it with one hand. Inside, nothing. No bar, no shelf, no hangers. Just a blank space. On the floor was a square of paper, folded neatly in half. I picked it up and unfolded it. Black marker letters across the center, "Leave this room now." That's when the knock came from under the bed. That one hit me harder. I dropped the paper and lunged at the door again. Pulled, kicked, slammed into it with everything I had. It still wouldn't move. Behind me, I heard the bathroom door creak. That slow, dragging groan of old hinges. No footsteps, no voices, just the door slowly opening. I turned around and shouted, "I don't want any trouble." Nothing answered, but the lamp next to the bed suddenly lit up. No flicker, just on. Just. The clock blinked back to life. 3:03. My phone buzzed once in my hand. Screen stayed black, then suddenly, the camera turned on by itself. Front-facing, framing my face. No app open, no camera roll, just the lens. Then it went black again, and the knocking started all over. Window, bathroom, closet, all three, in sync, perfect rhythm. I screamed. Something inside me broke loose. I slammed into the door with every bit of momentum I had. It flew open, and I stumbled into the freezing night air, barefoot, heartbeat pounding in my ears. All the other rooms were dark. No one came out. No sound from anywhere. I sprinted across the lot to the office. Lights were still on, the lamps still flickering, but the office was empty. No one inside. I didn't wait. I ran to my car, got in, locked the doors, started it with shaking hands, and drove. Didn't even think. Didn't check my mirrors until I hit the highway. Drove until I hit a gas station outside Sacramento and parked behind a line of semis. Slept curled up in the back seat with my coat over my head. I never went back for my stuff. Devin and I had this thing we did every October. Just the two of us, no itinerary, no bookings. Pick a direction in California and hit the road. It started right after college. One trip a year. One long weekend where we could unplug and get lost for a few days. Joshua Tree 1 year. Eastern Sierras the next. Last fall, we figured we'd follow the coast. We both lived in San Diego, so we packed the car early Thursday morning, tent, sleeping bags, a cooler full of snacks, and that old road atlas Devin insisted on using, even though we both had phones. There was something about the randomness of it that made it feel more real. More like an adventure and less like a vacation. We had no destination, no timeline. Just Highway 1 and 3 days to go wherever we wanted. The plan, if you could even call it that, was to drive north until we felt like stopping. No hotels, no campgrounds. Just pull over when we found something cool. We figured we'd crash in the tent somewhere along the way, maybe pitch it near the ocean, or sneak it into a quiet bit of forest like we'd done before. October's always been the sweet spot, no tourists, no blistering heat, and that weird quiet that comes with off-season travel, like the States taking a breath before winter. By the time we got past Santa Barbara that afternoon, the air had that sharp, salty edge you only get near the ocean, the kind that sticks to your clothes and your teeth. We had the windows down, music low, and both of us were just enjoying the kind of silence that only happens between people who've been friends long enough to not need small talk. Around Big Sur, the road started to twist more, hugging cliffs that dropped hundreds of feet down into the sea. That's where we saw it. One of those random old pull-offs. No sign, no markings. Just a narrow break in the trees and a little stretch of gravel big enough for a few cars. 2 vehicles were already there. A beige Volvo wagon and a white SUV with Utah plates. We pulled in behind them. No real reason. Just one of those, "this looks like a good place to stop" kind of moments. We figured we'd stretch, maybe take a few photos before the light faded. The view was wild, jagged coastline as far as you could see, ocean slamming into rocks below. You could feel the impact in your chest. But that wasn't what got to me. It was the Volvo. There was this sticker on the back. Though sticker feels like the wrong word. It was just a white circle with a black handprint in the middle. No slogan, no logo. Nothing to sell. The print looked pressed on. Like someone had actually dipped their hand in ink and slapped it onto the surface. It was slightly smudged, like whoever did it didn't hold still long enough. Devin saw it too. He made some crack about it, looking like a curse mark or a turn back now kind of sign. Typical Devin. He loved teasing me with that stuff. Urban legends, spooky forest stories, anything that would get a reaction. Usually I rolled my eyes. This time I just stared at the print. Something about it made the air feel thicker. We didn't see anyone near the other cars. no voices, no movement in the trees. Just the kind of stillness that doesn't quite feel peaceful. We stood near the edge for a few minutes, watched the light change. Devin eventually muttered something about needing to pee and wandered toward the woods, waving dramatically like he was being sucked into the shadows. I laughed, shook my head, leaned against the hood of the car, and checked my phone. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then a little more. I wasn't panicking or anything. He'd wandered off before. But eventually I looked up and called his name. No answer. I walked to the tree line and called again, a little louder. Still nothing. That's when I noticed something weird about the trees. They were tall, sure, but not dense. There were wide gaps between them, like you could easily weave through without brushing a single branch, but they felt arranged, like someone had spaced them out too deliberately, too evenly. It was enough to make me hesitate, just for a second, but I stepped in. His trail was easy to follow. He wasn't exactly stealthy. Crushed leaves, bent grass, a few broken twigs. But about 30, maybe 40 feet in, the trail just stopped. Completely. No fade. No turn. Just one last clear footprint in the dirt and then nothing. I looked around, assuming maybe he'd jumped onto a rock or changed direction. That's when I saw the other prints. Bare feet. Not small, but not massive either. Just wrong. Wider than mine. Each toe was clear. Defined. Pressed deep into the soil like whoever made them was heavy or had been standing still for too long. They came from deeper in the woods. Met Devin's trail. Then both sets stopped at the exact same place. There weren't even scuffs. No sign of a struggle. Just done. Like the forest had swallowed them both whole. I didn't stay to investigate. I ran. Full sprint, back through the trees, yelling Devin's name over and over. But when I reached the pull-off, it was empty. The Volvo and the SUV were gone. Like, completely gone. No dust trail, no sound, no sign they'd ever been there. Devin's stuff was still in our car, his backpack in the trunk, hoodie on the seat, phone between the cup holders. Still playing the same playlist we'd started that morning. I tried calling the police, but my phone barely had signal. The call dropped twice before I got through to the ranger station. They told me to drive 6 miles north and meet someone at a small ranger post. I told them everything I could between shaky breaths. 2 search teams went out. One with me, back to the exact spot. The other followed a camera line deeper into the woods. They confirmed the prints. Devin's shoes, the barefoot ones. But they didn't find anything past that point. And when I asked what they meant by, "You're not the first," they just looked at each other and said the area had a reputation. They wouldn't go into details, just said they'd keep searching and follow procedure. That night, I checked into a motel outside Monterey. Cheap place, buzzing overhead lights. A TV bolted to the wall with the volume permanently too loud. I paced the room until I wore a line in the carpet. Tried to rationalize it all. Maybe Devin had gotten lost and someone picked him up. Maybe it was a prank, a bad one. He was known for that. But around 3 in the morning, there was a knock on my door. One single knock. Not frantic, not hesitant, just firm. I froze. Didn't even breathe. Then came the sound, breathing. Right on the other side of the door. Wet, ragged, like someone struggling to inhale through water. I whispered Devin's name without thinking. Nothing. The doorknob turned. I had locked it deadbolt too. It clicked against the frame but didn't open. The breathing stopped. Then, silence. Not even footsteps walking away. In the morning, I went straight to the front desk. The manager looked confused when I told him. Said the power had cut out sometime after 3. No footage. No logs. No one else checked in or out during that time. I drove straight back to the ranger station. The search had turned up nothing. No sign of Devin. No additional footprints. No animals. No clothing. No blood. Just a spot in the forest where 2 trails ended and never picked up again. They asked me again if Devin had any reason to disappear, any mental health issues, anything he was running from. I told them no, because there was no doubt in my mind. He didn't just walk off. Something happened out there. I went home 2 days later. Filed reports, printed flyers, launched a subreddit, talked to anyone who'd listen, but nothing came of it. Weeks passed, then months, and now a year, still nothing. And I had started to accept that maybe I'd never know what really happened. My shift at the almond plant started at 4. I'd been there long enough that the noise didn't bother me anymore. The constant whir of the belts, the dry rattle of shells, that echoing clack when a bin got too full. It all blended into this low background drone that sort of settled into your head. It wasn't a dream job. It was just something I did. Steady hours, steady pay. Nothing complicated. But October always brought a different kind of energy to the floor. Everything sped up. The orders, the machines, even the workers. You could feel it. Officially, the company said it was because people were baking more. Pies, trail mix, seasonal snacks, whatever. But none of us bought that. You don't triple your output because of pumpkin spice. We just knew that every October, the place felt heavier, faster, more intense. Everyone showed up, did their time, and didn't ask questions. The air always had that burnt sugar smell from the roasting lime, clung to your clothes, got in your hair. I stopped noticing that too, until people outside the plant started wrinkling their noses and asking if I'd been to a carnival. That Thursday night was the first weird thing. Line 3, the one closest to the south dock, stuttered for exactly 3 seconds. I know because I counted them. 1, 2, 3. Then it made this hard grinding sound, like metal dragging against metal, spat out a few clumps of almond husks, and picked up right where it left off like nothing had happened. Stuff like that wasn't a big deal. Lines jam all the time. Sometimes the sensor gets blocked, or the hopper sticks. You get used to it. But when I looked down at the belt, something looked off. The almonds coming through didn't look right. Most were normal, but every now and then one would pass with a streak of dark red across the shell. Just a faint blotch, not the bright fake red you'd see in food dye or candy coating. This was darker, dried looking, uneven. I flagged down Miguel, who was working the floor that night. He barely glanced up from his clipboard. Probably grease. "Keep going," he said, classic Miguel. Always more clipboard than manager. So I did what he said. I kept going. But I was watching. The belt's rhythm was wrong. It wasn't feeding like it normally did. That steady, grainy flow of nuts from the top chute. This felt different. The belt moved like it was under pressure, like the chute wasn't just dropping almonds, but forcing them out, pushing them. About 10 minutes later, I picked one of the red-streaked almonds off the line, just to look. It was warm. And I don't mean room temperature warm. I mean warm like a hand. Like someone had just held it for a long time and then placed it down. I turned it over. The shell had a thin, clean crack running down the center. Perfectly straight. Too straight. I've handled tens of thousands of almonds over the years. I know what a cracked shell looks like. This wasn't that. I gave it a little squeeze. The shell broke apart with a soft snap, and this faint smell drifted out. Metallic. Like a rusty pipe or dried blood. Not strong, just enough to make your nose twitch. Inside, not a nut. Just a little tangle of hair, short strands, dark, curled into a damp little ball. Caught in something pale and soft, like half-dried glue or raw chicken skin. I dropped it without thinking and wiped my glove hard against my jacket. No one else noticed. They just kept working, eyes glazed, like always. A few minutes later, another clump rolled by. This one had a sliver of something sharp inside. I leaned in. It was a fingernail. Just a shard, maybe half an inch. Wedged in like it had grown there. I stared at it too long. That's when I stepped off the line. I headed to the intake dock, where the raw sacks came in. I wanted to see what was feeding into line 3. The loading area was quiet. Just the usual rows of shrink-wrapped pallets and the low thrum of the ventilation overhead. Each sack had a printed label, orchard ID, batch number, shipping origin. Neat, stamped, official, except the one tied to the feeder for line 3. That one had a handwritten tag. Just 3 words, San Joaquin, 13A. The ink had run, like it'd been written with a wet pen or smeared by a damp thumb. I cut the sack open with my box cutter. Steam came out, actual steam. Not a huge plume, just a faint warm mist rising like the sack had been sitting near a heat vent. The almonds inside were damp, clumped together, not dried like they should be. I reached in and pushed my glove through the pile, feeling for anything solid. There was something soft in the middle, spongy. I pulled it out. It was a piece of bone, a jaw, I think, small, child-sized. 3 baby teeth still rooted in the gum line. I held it for half a second, then dropped it and staggered back. The conveyor behind me started again. I hadn't touched the switch. I turned around. Line 3 was running smooth again, almonds trickling along like nothing had happened. But the bag I just opened, the one with the bone, gone. No trace of it. No spilled shells, no tag, no damp spot on the concrete. Just clean floor. I walked up to the supervisor's office. Door was locked, lights off, nobody in sight. And when I looked out over the floor from the stairs, I swear the sound of the machines had changed. Still the same volume, but lower somehow. Guttural, like something alive was inside the walls, breathing in rhythm with the belts. I stayed after my shift. Told the lead I couldn't find my keys. Janitor crew was supposed to come through at 6. But when the clock hit 6:30, they hadn't shown. Their carts were there, but the floor was spotless, cleaner than usual. Almost too clean. Like someone had come through and wiped everything down with purpose. I walked up to the security office and checked the camera feeds. All the lines showed normal footage. Just loops of people sorting, loading, taping boxes. Except line 3, that feed was black, just a flicker of static. Then, suddenly, it blinked to life. There was someone on the screen. One of the workers, standing with their back to the camera, hands moving methodically over the belt. After 10 seconds, they turned around, looked straight at the lens, and smiled. Their mouth stretched too far, lips peeled back like they were forcing it, eyes dry. Unblinking, the timestamp in the corner said October 13th, 3:13 a.m. It didn't change. It just sat there, frozen, looping. I left without clocking out. Didn't come back for my last check. Didn't answer when Miguel called. That night, around 3:13, my phone rang once. Unknown number, no message. A minute later, my doorbell rang. Nobody there. Just a neat row of almonds, 12 or 13 of them, laid out in a line on the welcome mat. Each one split open, a thin drop of something dark inside. I swept them into a trash bag and threw it in the outside bin. Went to bed. Couldn't sleep. I kept hearing it. That soft, steady whine. Same pitch as line 3. Same rhythm. Like it was running somewhere nearby. It stopped only when the sun came up. Next morning I checked the yard. No sign of anything. No tire marks, no equipment, no sign anyone had been there. But half buried in the dirt near the side fence, a grower tag, soaked, edges curling, San Joaquin, 13A, ink still wet. I called the plant. Phone rang once, then dropped. I drove out there that afternoon. The place was boarded up, chains across the gate, windows painted black, sign ripped off the front. Like it had never existed. I figured that was it. I'd been doing a favor for a buddy named Marcus, who was setting up a haunted house for his niece's birthday. He'd forgotten to order a scarecrow outfit, and since I was already out near Garden Grove, I told him I'd check the thrift stores. I found a pair of old denim overalls and a scarecrow mask buried in a clearance bin, $5 total. They smelled faintly like mildew and dryer sheets, but that kind of added to the vibe. It was mid-October, that strange in-between stretch when Los Angeles starts to lean into its spooky season. Decorations everywhere, half of them creative, and the other half borderline crimes against taste. Plastic bones sticking out of lawns, fake blood dripping down mailboxes, blow-up ghosts tangled in jacaranda branches. Everything looks like it's trying a little too hard. I took the long route home, following Canyon Ridge for the view. That road winds along the hills, with these sudden quiet turnouts where the whole basin opens up beneath you. The city looks soft from up there, like it's pretending to be peaceful. I pulled over at one of those turnouts to check my phone before heading back down. The sky had that golden, hazy tint that only lasts a few minutes before dusk really hits. I popped the trunk and reached for the costume bag. That's when I saw it, something hanging from the jacaranda tree across the road. At first, I didn't think much of it. Probably another Halloween decoration. People up there love turning the drive into their own spooky showcase. But this one didn't look like a prop. It was too still. The shape too natural. The rope looped tightly over the thick branch, and the figure just hung there, neither swaying nor rigid. It looked like a man. I remember squinting at it, thinking maybe it was one of those ultra-realistic mannequins from movie sets. LA's full of weird collectors. But then, as I stepped closer, I realized something about it felt off. The air felt weighted, like the silence had a texture to it. And then he moved. Not a sway, not a shift from the wind. He moved on his own. His head turned slightly, enough to face me. His eyes were open, and they were focused right on me. Not cloudy or lifeless, not panicked or pained either, just aware, completely aware. I froze. He wasn't struggling, he wasn't limp. He just hung there, calmly watching me like he'd been waiting. My brain couldn't make sense of it. For a second, I thought maybe it was some kind of elaborate art installation, something performance-based. But the longer I looked, the more real it felt. The way the skin on his hands caught the fading light, the faint tension in his neck, the complete stillness in everything else. Then I felt something like a snap in my chest. Adrenaline, pure and sharp. I dropped the costume bag, jumped into the car, and tore out of there. The tires screamed as I hit the curve too fast, clipping the curb on the way down. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely keep the wheel straight. I kept checking the rearview mirror like an idiot, half expecting to see him standing in the middle of the road behind me. But there was nothing. When I finally got cell service again, I pulled over and called the LAPD non-emergency line. I told them what I saw, gave them the exact turnout, the tree, the marker post. Tried to sound calm. The operator didn't sound surprised. Just said, "We'll send someone to check it out." That was it. No questions. No disbelief. Just a flat, automatic response. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face again. Those calm, waiting eyes. They weren't asking for help. They weren't pleading. They just looked like they wanted to be seen. Like that was the point. The next morning, I called Marcus to see if he got the costume. He said no. Nothing had been dropped off. That made no sense, because I remembered setting the bag in the trunk before everything happened. So I drove back. The tree was empty. No rope, no man, just the soft hum of traffic from far below. But tied to the lowest branch, swaying gently, was the scarecrow mask, the same one from the thrift store. It was hanging there by a strip of twine like someone had carefully placed it. No sign of the overalls, no note, just the mask, gently spinning in the breeze. I don't know how long I stood there staring at it. Long enough that my legs started to ache. Then I reached up, untied it, and took it down. It felt wrong to leave it. I put it back in the trunk, closed it this time, and drove home. Didn't even think about it until after sunset. When I finally brought it inside, I left it on the kitchen table, still in the plastic wrap. Told myself I'd deal with it tomorrow. But the next morning, I woke up to something that stopped me cold. Footprints, starting at the front door, crossing the living room, ending at the kitchen table. They weren't muddy or wet, just faint, dusty impressions, like someone had walked in with sand on their shoes. I live on the third floor of a secure building. The hallway's carpeted. You can hear every door, every step. But I hadn't heard anything all night. The door was still locked, the chain latched, windows sealed tight. I went downstairs to the leasing office, asked to check the security footage. The manager sighed like I was bothering him, but pulled it up. There was nothing. No one came near my door. No one even walked by. Just an empty hallway. I didn't say a word about the footprints. Didn't mention the mask. That night, I took a drive out to Burbank, found a Ralph's with dumpsters in the back, and waited until no one was around. I shoved the mask still sealed deep under a pile of leaking garbage bags and crushed boxes. Then I drove home. Didn't sleep again. Just washed the door. 3 days went by. Nothing happened. No weird noises, no footprints, no deliveries. Then a package showed up. No return address. Just my name, written neatly in black marker. Inside was one thing, the overalls. Clean, folded. Folded, pressed flat. They smelled faintly of mildew and plastic, exactly like before. I didn't think. I grabbed lighter fluid, went out onto the fire escape, and lit them. The flame caught instantly, bright and angry. The denim curled and shriveled, turning black. 15 minutes later, someone must have called the fire department. They showed up, looked at the mess, and told me to be more careful. Didn't even take my name. That night, the scarecrow mask was waiting on my doormat. Perfectly clean. No burns. No smoke smell. I just stood there staring at it. Finally, I opened the door and kicked it down the hallway, watched it slide out of sight. The next morning, it was gone, and it's never come back.